Hey there, and welcome to The Drive, CBSNews.com's show telling you who's up and who's down in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. I'm your host, Brian Montopoli, and we are here to talk about who could be the anti-Romney. Now, we talked last week about how Mitt Romney is really sort of, at least according to political insiders, the runaway favorite for the nomination. But this is a guy who's still having trouble crossing 20-25% in opinion polls. A lot of Republican voters don't like Mitt Romney. He may be doing everything right. The insiders may think he's got the best shot, but there is really still room for an anti-Romney candidate. And I want to talk about three possibilities for that slot today. But first, let's take a look at the big board, where you'll see we have Mitt Romney all the way in the front of the pack up here on the 40. And then I've put these three guys who are sort of his top rivals, Herman Cain, Rick Perry, and Newt Gingrich back here. Now, if you look at the polls, they have Cain right with Romney. They have Gingrich right with Romney. And Perry's polling pretty low. He's about there. He's 7-8%. The polls don't match where things should be. And let's talk about why. I want to start with Herman Cain. So Herman Cain, we had this big CBS News debate in South Carolina this weekend. Great time. I got a chance to go. And he got through this debate pretty well. This is a guy without any foreign policy experience. He did give vague answers, but he never had sort of one of those YouTube moments that Rick Perry can tell you all about, where he really screwed things up. So that was a relief. Cut to Monday. He goes to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, goes before their editorial board, and gets asked if he agrees with President Obama on Libya. Well, his answer, his 5-minute rambling answer with pauses, with questions, went viral. It's gotten more than 1 million views on YouTube already, and it made him look very bad. Now, he says a president doesn't need to know all of these details, but I think many Americans look at a guy who's running for president and say he should have some understanding of the Libya conflict. It didn't look that way. That hurt him. It was just the latest example of why Cain is sort of fading. There was a CNN poll over the weekend that had him down, and I think Cain is really dropping out of this race, and I think we're going to see that develop over the next couple weeks. So let's talk about Rick Perry. Now, Perry, like I said, is at about 7-8% in the polls, but he's trying to reboot. He's come out with this new plan where he wants Congress to work half the time that they're currently working and take a pay cut. It looks a little bit like what happens in Texas. He wants to cut spending to 18% of GDP, which would be a major spending cut. Now, a lot of this is rhetoric. A lot of this is stuff that would never actually happen. Congress is actually working less now than it has in a long time, and a lot of folks are rolling their eyes at this, but Perry needs to reintroduce himself to voters. The reason that I'm taking Perry seriously, even though he's only at 6 or 7%, is this is a guy who has the money to move the numbers. 7 in 10 voters, Republican primary voters, tell CBS News they have not settled in on a candidate. A lot of folks haven't really tuned into this race, and if Rick Perry can recast himself as this Washington outsider who's going to blow everything up, who's going to really change things, kind of like what Obama was arguing, right, when he ran for president, then he has a chance. So we've got to take Perry seriously, but he's still not quite there. Lastly, I want to talk about Newt Gingrich. This is a guy who I, here on The Drive, had buried. I said he's got no shot at this thing. Well, I'm sure Newt is laughing at me and all of the other pundits who said there's no way it's going to happen, because he is now right up there in the polls. But with a rise in the polls, which has been driven by great debate performances, comes scrutiny. There are stories today about how Gingrich was paid millions of dollars by Freddie Mac, which of course is a big boogeyman for conservatives. There are emails going around among conservatives talking about his position on immigration, climate change, cap and trade that are more liberal than I think a lot of conservatives would like to see. And then Gingrich just has what frankly must be called a likability problem. He has a hard time, I think, not sort of seeming too professorial and arrogant when he deals with people. He's been great in the debates, but the question is, now that the spotlight is on him, can he keep it up? Most people in Washington don't think so, but it remains to be seen. So let's go back to the big board and let's talk about where people stand. So which of these three men has the best chance to be the consensus anti-Romney candidate? Well, I don't think it's Cain. Between Libya and these other issues, we're going to put him back here. I'm also skeptical of Gingrich. To me, he looks like the latest sort of flavor of the month. And despite the fact that Perry's at 6 or 7% in the polls, I think Perry, if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Perry. So my money on the anti-Romney candidate right now is Rick Perry, despite everything. But obviously, it's going to be an interesting race. There's a lot of variability, and we'll have to see what happens. I'm Brian Montopoli for The Drive. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you next time.